We are back with this week's edition of the Missyae show, and tonight we've got double trouble. We've got both pinners with us tonight, Jonathan and Stacy. How are you guys doing?
Great.
We're doing great, but I hate to correct you first thing.
Oh, gosh.
But Stacy is not a penner. She's my wife, but her name is title.
Yeah,
I don't use it much, but I don't mind when people refer to me that way, Johnny.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have asked me, I guess a bunch of times in whispers, why does it say title? Is that like is it a title of some kind? Does she like run their business or?
Well, she certainly does, but and for two writers to have the names title and penner is pretty funny.
It is. That's a walking joke right there.
Well, we certainly are walking jokes. But Stacy was, is and was when we got married so successful that it didn't make sense for her to take my name and screw up what
so
was
successful.
working.
Thank you. I was definitely the first published writer at that point, so I kept my name. But the reason it's spelled like a word is because my grandfather, it was actually T-E-I-T-E-L, which is from back in the day a pointer for the Bible or the Haftorah for Jews. And my family were rabbis of all things. I mean, because I'm pretty secular as a Jew, but the name title was that. And then he saw a headline for a newspaper that said Jack Dempsey wins title T-I-T-L-E, and he respelled the name. So that's how my name.
So you're actually named for the
pointer.
The championship. No, the title. I didn't even know that.
See what you learn on this show?
I love it. What else could I learn, please?
Well, I don't know if you can learn anything from watching that episode tonight, but maybe you can teach some of us why would these people fall for things like what Reynolds fell for at Tribal Council.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't quite know what that was about. I mean, it really did seem to me, and I just saw the show, Stacy and I just watched it, that Malcolm really did somehow appeal to him. We all heard the same thing. When Phillip said what he said, I said, oh, crap, he just gave away the ghost to Malcolm.
Right.
Malcolm maybe very ingeniously held on to his own idol and said, yeah, Reynolds, help the dude out and give me yours. And Reynolds fell for it. Why the hell he would do that, I have no idea. But he was prepared to play it for himself.
Exactly.
It would have gone wasted anyway.
Right.
And, all Malcolm did was he really protected the secrecy of his own idol, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. But the thing was, Malcolm even voted for Reynolds.
I know.
And then took his idol.
He did vote. I'm not sure what that was, how he's going to explain that. Why he...
That was a little bit like when Jeff Kent went home in your season, where you were like, I'm not going to vote for anyone that could vote for me on the jury. And you voted not with Jeff and those guys because you thought you had the votes, you had Scubin's vote, right, Johnny?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And so your vote also seemed like a one-off, the way that did.
Well, yeah, I threw away a vote to Abby, but him voting for Reynolds...
Yeah.
And then taking Reynolds, listen, well, you'll have to ask Malcolm. I'd be fascinated to hear what he says. He obviously had something in mind. But here's the truth. He was on the outside. He didn't know that they were going to vote for Michael. They pulled one over on him. They didn't vote for him, but they still didn't have him on the inside track. None of those guys were on the inside track. And what you don't get to see, and I don't know this for sure, except I know there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it to the show. These guys know that they're on the outside. They know they're on their way out, 1, 2, 3, and it's a matter of in what order. He's trying to keep himself as alive as possible. He's really up against the ropes, Malcolm, and part of that is that he was the unknown quantity to the favorites.
Right.
They didn't know who the hell he was. They had to assume he went deep in the season previous, that he didn't win. And that he might have been a nefarious player.
Yeah.
Right. The way that the only other person that played back-to-back like that, where people didn't get to see a season, was who but Russell Hantz.
And Rupert.
And everyone went in seeing Malcolm and thinking, there's something up with that guy. I'm sure.
Yeah. Had Rupert done the same thing?
Yeah, Rupert went back-to-back. He played Pearl Islands and then All-Stars.
Right.
Yeah, but he's a total wild card. And Malcolm is playing like a total wild card. I mean, what he pulled tonight, whatever was in his mind, whatever the plan was that he thought was going to come down, I guess that they were all going to split the votes. I think what happened was, here's what I think. He thought that they were either going to split the votes the way they told him, that he really was on the inside, and his would have been the decisive vote. You know, he could have gone back to camp and said, I voted the way you told me we were going to vote. I think that's what he's going to go back to camp and say.
That is exactly what my first impression was when I first saw it tonight, and saw the vote and saw what he did with the idol. I thought he was sitting there thinking, you know, if everyone's not being honest with me and this is going to come down to me or him, I'm going to throw him a vote where it's him.
Right.
You know, and I think that may have been the whole thing. But, you know, short term it looks really good for him and he made a fool out of Reynolds, but what's going to be the fallout?
Yeah, no, I think he's going to have a lot of splaining to do when he gets back to camp. You know, I remember going back to camp and throwing a vote to Abby, not to make it about me, but, you know, like, I had to explain why the hell I voted for Abby, you know,
right,
and make some crap up about, well, you know, you told me it was going to go this way and it didn't, and I was pissed off and blah, 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 which really wasn't the case at all. You know, he's going to have to do a little juggling, and the fact is, he's up against the ropes. He's in trouble, and he was in trouble tonight, whether he knew it or not.
He was in trouble last week when his alliance with Corinne went up in smoke.
Right.
So for him to say this week, I need to make a move, yeah, man, and I think he knows it. I think it was all kind of destroyed last week.
I think the downfall started last week, and they didn't show him as being kind of in the desperation mode this week, but I think he sort of was, the way he was scrambling around and telling so many people what the plans were and revealing his hand like he did.
Yeah, as I say, it's very hard. As a returning player, I remember in Fans versus Favorites, there were 10 of us. Some of those folks had friendships pre-show. Alliances were made, whether they were sticking with them or not.
Yeah.
You know, he really is the odd man out. And until you get down to the final 6, 7, 8, whatever, you know, you just got to be playing a numbers game, and he's not on the inside.
No, he's not. And you know, people are going to argue it both ways, whether he should have just tried to stay in with the favorites and kind of been at the bottom of the totem pole, or do you try to go with the fans and make a move and get the numbers and maybe be in control? So it'll be debated back and forth, but I think we'll find out pretty soon what's going to become of him, because he's really got the heat on him now.
And by the way, you know, he's tired. He's playing back-to-back, which I only can ask Jonathan, because I wouldn't know. After you play, to go back out there, what's the gap of time? 2 weeks in between?
I think they have like 10 days in between.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
And he must be exhausted. He doesn't have any chance to mentally prepare, which, you know, Jonathan does tons of prep when he plays. He swims, and he does puzzles, and he does nuts, and he throws balls at the wall and breaks things, and he's like a kook. I mean, he does all this wacky prep because he's like an actor who prepares. I think for Malcolm, that must have been really exhausting. I just have to think.
Yeah, different people see it different ways. I know Russell told me when he went back to back, he actually thought it was an advantage that they didn't know about his game.
I bet.
And I talked with Coach Wade last week on the show and asked him what he thought about that. He said he thinks it's a distinct advantage going back to back.
Interesting. Well, you know, if it was for when Russell went back to back, it's true he went into a big context with a lot of other survivors. You know, the thing about Malcolm this season and watching the 2 seasons and knowing how he played with Jonathan, he seemed to be more in control last season. It's just my only kind of moderate observation. What do you think, Johnny?
Well, yeah. Again, I just have to keep going back to he's on the outside of the favorites alliance, you know.
Yeah.
And that's just a terrible, tough place to find yourself. And you can scramble, and you can try things. You can try to play under the radar. You can try to make big moves, but not everybody wins. not every move you make is going to work out. You know, people are going to get taken out. The fact that he's survived into the jury as an unknown quantity who was a favorite, yes, it's an advantage to him as opposed to being a fan this time, but it's proving, I think, and I love him, it's proving not to be an advantage, you know, in terms of who he's playing with on the favorites.
Here's my question for both of you guys. And by the way, if he had stayed with the Stealth Are Us, or really what it seems to be, you know, Cochran and Brenda and Dawn and Andrea's decision making really is really what's going on.
Right.
If he had stayed with them, he's toasting them on every challenge. Why is he going with the beefy guys and going, you know, that whole let's do a bromance? Then you're actually competing with people who can beat you. Whereas if he stays with that side, then he just pulls an Aussie and wins a little bit, which he could easily do against those guys. Why would he stay with that?
Again, you're assuming that he's in a position to stay with anybody.
Right.
You know, he may be able to survive to the final 7 or final 8 at this point, just if they decide to keep all the favorites around, but they're not going to. You know, I mean, I wouldn't. It's time to pick off some of these stronger guys. 1, 2 of them may make it to the end, but they're not all going to make it to the end. You know, Andrea maybe had a smart idea to, okay, let's go for the easy, low-hanging fruit. Dawn's idea, we can blindside him today. Andrea was right, because Phillip gave up the ghost, at least according to the TV.
Right.
Whether Malcolm actually had an inkling that he was on the outs and he needed to figure out how the hell he was going to stay alive and pulled what might have been a genius move by getting Reynolds to sacrifice his own idol, I don't know. But according to what the edit was, he seemed to get the idea right then from Phillip and pulled a rabbit out of his hat.
And you know from being out there 3 times, Jonathan, that happens a lot. You can go to tribal council with one thing in mind, and as information starts coming out at tribal council, it can change your plans.
Absolutely. I can attest to that. You know, and you hope that you listen, the last thing you want is to go home with an idol in your pocket. You know, you'd rather play an idol than make a mistake and play it too soon than not play it, you know, when you needed to. And he still has an idol in his pocket, you know, which means that they now are looking down the barrel of, we got to blindside this guy fast. We have to now really pull him in and blindside him as quick as we can, or we're looking at a Final 4 up against Malcolm, who has aligned himself with the people who are going to be on the jury.
Exactly.
You know, there's you have to be cognizant of the jury, and if the jury is going to be all of the fans, well, hell, he's aligned himself with them. You know, you don't want to be sitting next to Malcolm.
And you say this, and I'm sure you said this in an interview, so I hope this isn't boring, Jim, but Jonathan always talks about there's 2 games to play, and, you know, he played one, he played another. You get to the end, but you can't win.
Right.
Or you play to win, and you hope you get to the end, where you know you're going to get the votes. And, you know, there's 2 different ways to play, and sometimes people just think when they get to the end, well, then I should win. But
well, and another thing along those lines, that comes with experience too, because the first time you're out there, you may be a super fan and you may think you really understand how to play the game, but you just don't quite know it yet. And that brings to mind Cochran. As big a student of the game as he was,
he didn't play great.
He didn't play all that great the last time. He went a long way, but he didn't really make good moves. And this season, he seems to be totally in control of what he's doing.
Totally.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, he didn't get he got a little bit of screen time. And in fact, he had one of the great lines of the last couple of seasons when he was talking about with the tomfoolery of these numbskulls or something.
Yeah.
You know, that was hilarious, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, I think he's more in control than they edited it to. Dawn is obviously playing a very savvy game, much more savvy game than the last time. Andrea's actually made she seemed to be quite panicked, but I think made a pretty safe but savvy move this week.
Right.
It does feel like Cochran is in control, at least of himself, and I think of his alliance, and is smartly letting Phillip blow his mouth off
exactly.
and play the fool, is letting Dawn be a little hysterical, is letting Andrea play the flirty game, whatever, and he's just sort of essentially flying under the radar, and now he's in a pretty good position, I think.
Yeah, I think he is, and the thing that he's doing really well is he's still in the loop. He still knows everyone's plans, right. and he knows, like, you know, he spoke up about Andrea. He's really sharp in the confessionals, letting the fans know, I don't really quite agree with this, but and then he's playing the type of game that he knows will get him there without causing much attention on himself.
Right, exactly. Right. Exactly.
And then he'll get the votes. I mean, I think when you think about the Survivor Philippines, and Jonathan's probably sick of talking about the Philippines, but for him, what was important was to get votes in the end. And in the end, when Lisa offered him an opportunity, and he had already made an endgame alliance with Scoop and Carter, he thought she was next to go, and he didn't want to double back on her so that she wouldn't vote for him. Little did he know that that Scoop was going to invert it again. It's interesting,
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about with experience. I mean, it was really clear to me watching Jonathan last season that he was setting up the jury. He was playing what people call a winning game. If he could have got there, he had the jury set to benefit himself. And that's a huge part in winning. It's totally different just trying to get there than it is to play a winning game that when you do get there, you can get the votes.
Well, that's what I was trying to do. Obviously, I made a mistake, or miscalculated, and needed to make a bigger move than at the time that I made. I continued to play it as safe as I had played it. The truth is, and I don't know if I've talked about this, and I don't know if you care, but I was pretty tired at that point.
Yeah.
I'd essentially been voted off, and had saved myself with the idol. Was in the crosshairs, and had saved myself with my one and only immunity win. That was the crazy night that Jeff Kent went home. No one yet knows exactly how that happened, myself included. And then I was working, in the seeds that I had been sowing with Lisa and Scoop, and finally seemed to come to fruition. And then when I was finally in a position to recognize the turn into the end game, didn't see it, didn't take that turn in time, and which of course was my downfall. But all during that time, including the vote with Jeff Kent, taking out Pete and Artis, was currying favor with the jury. It was all to get me into position where, if I was sitting there at the end, then I would have won the game. But I didn't get there because I screwed it up.
Right. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with part 2. We are back with part 2, and we were discussing a little bit about Survivor Philippines and how to set up a jury, because that's a huge part of trying to win this thing. Looking at it this year, with who's left now, knowing, I think most everybody knows this by now, the jury starts next week. The first member of the jury will be next week.
Oh,
it was tonight. It was Mike.
Oh, what? I don't think Mike was jury.
I don't think so.
No, they had 2 this season after merge that won't be jury. I think jury starts next week. There'll be 7 jury.
Johnny thought that was because, tell them why, Jim, because Jim would find this interesting, Johnny.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know, because I thought he said, and the first member of our jury.
No, you thought it was because they had a challenge at the river.
Oh, yes, I did.
Tell them so much.
I thought because they had the immunity challenge at the river and Corinne was the last non-jury member who was then taken. The river is essentially where the Ponderosa camp was. And that they could only do that challenge if they had cleared the camp of the non-jury members. But folks who are listening, am I crazy that he didn't say the member of our jury?
Yeah, I don't think he did. I think everyone would have noticed that because everyone was tweeting and talking about, wow, they still hadn't started the jury yet. So I guess what that means is we have a 7-person jury with 3 finalists. Right. And looking at it right now, as far as fans go, you've got Sherry, Eddie, and Reynolds, and that's it. If you look at maybe 1 or 2 of them getting into the finals, this jury is going to be predominantly favorites.
Exactly.
Right. So even if they make it to the finals, it would have to be all 3 of them to win. Now, I could, as a final 3 member of one of the fans, make a hell of an argument, though, to say I should have been dead, I should have been gone. Look at how many of you are on the jury that's your favorites, and look at me. How did I survive and beat you guys? I deserve to win. That's what I would argue.
Right.
But that said, I think there are going to be more. Obviously, the jury's going to be made up of favorites, and the chances that the final 3 are all or most favorites is great. And they're going to argue for themselves.
Right. I believe so too. I think, if Vegas set odds on it at this point right now, it would be heavily on a returnee to win this thing this season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like Eddie is cool enough to win. I just don't see that they're giving him an edit that tells me that he's a winner.
Right.
Reynolds is getting a pretty flamboyant edit, but I'd be amazed if he was the winner. I mean, I'm just being honest.
Right.
Brenda has had, correct me if I'm wrong, has had no confessional.
Brenda, and I was going to bring that up. Brenda has almost, not even been on our TVs. She even wins a pretty rigorous challenge tonight, and doesn't even get a confessional after that.
I know. I mean, and with that kind of slightly, excuse the expression, but sadistic kind of challenge where they're basically having you drown yourself to win, it's very metaphorically, water, fire, all that stuff. And then she wins it by being so cool and so in this.
Right.
And then not to let her at least say, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. It was, and I mean, she had a knee injury earlier, and they haven't really shown that a whole lot either. I mean, you see the.
Yeah, it's funny. I just tweeted about that tonight. She could barely stand on that leg.
Yeah, it's noticeable.
Did you see that? Where she's like hopping. She can't even put weight down on that leg.
Right. Or Strug or something,
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, she slipped. There was a challenge pretty early on with the lily pads, and slipped and strained her knee at that point. And I mean, she's pretty tough cookie. She's not gonna leave. But you would think they would focus in on that and kind of make her an underdog with an edit,
Well,
I agree.
Yeah, but you know how it goes. It'll become an issue if and when she gets closer to her end in the game.
Probably.
If it becomes an issue where somebody looks at her and says, like, she can't even walk, or she's not.
At this point in the game, it's individual, so you want to keep someone around who can't beat you. I mean,
yeah, but if she's in agony or misery, listen, I don't know how it goes. Or she could be medevaced. I mean, it's possible.
Well, the thing with her, the challenge tonight was really suited her because I mean she's really great in the water. She owns a paddleboard company. She's in the water all the time, and she didn't have to do anything with her legs except prop them up on the bar.
And with her tiny face, honestly, which could fit, but she could get her legs in between those rebar slats in a way like I couldn't.
Right.
She could get her face up between those two pieces of rebar further up there than some of the bigger guys could have, I think. But it was a hell of a challenge, man.
Yeah, it's funny on some of the challenges each season. I know they go to great lengths to make them so fair for everyone, but just something happens where it benefits somebody. I can remember all the way back on Pearl Islands when Dara Johnson was on. They had some kind of challenge where you had water inside a little tube and like a little plastic ball, and you had to make the plastic ball rise to the top so you could take it out. Well, her hands and arm was so tiny, she just reached in and grabbed it.
Right.
So.
Well, that whole gaming the game part of the game started to sound insane when I just said that, but Jonathan always talks about that whenever you watch the challenge. I'm thinking back to Cook Islands. There was some weird challenge where they were on boats and they were shooting in the water and stuff, and it was when after he had mutinied, they the four of them figured out a way to use the boat better. And tonight, Jonathan said the same thing. He was like, "Oh, the dream team's pissed. You just go over, and that's how you win." They hadn't figured that out.
Well, yes, that basketball or soccer, whatever you wanted to call it, where you had to throw it in the net.
Yeah, just throw it up high.
Yeah, all you had to do is lob it, and I guarantee that the dream team, who's the team that tests it all out,
right,
just tried to fire as hard as they could so that it would be more telegenic and would make the goaltenders kind of like fly through the air as they tried to block shots,
Yeah.
And they because they could easily have redesigned it so that you couldn't lob it in. But they love that. They love when we figure out a way to kind of beat the system, They really keep the rules as simple as possible, so that if there's a way that we can find to stay without breaking the rules, they give us as few rules as possible. So if you can figure out some other way to win without breaking the rules, they're all for it.
Right.
I remember there was one challenge that I did with Ozzy in Fans versus Favorites where we had to dive down and pull coconuts out of a cage with numbers or letters on them, and he, had this unbelievable breath capacity. He'd go down for 2 minutes and pull all of the letters, or as many as he could, to the front of the cage, so that all we had to do was dive down, and they were right there waiting for us.
Right.
So even though we went slow for the first 2 minutes, we just took the lead and then won. And I was able to apply that kind of strategy in the Philippines. We had a challenge where we had to find bags in the corner of a mud pit or something.
Uh-huh.
So has you found all the bags?
Yep.
So I just found them all, and then the other tribe mates just picked them up, and it saved us a lot of time. Anyway,
Right.
so we try. They love when we come up with stuff that they never thought of. It's cool.
Well, all right. Back to the favorites this season. What do you think? How would you react if you were on a tribe and you've got this guy like Phillip with all these crazy nicknames and Stealth R Us trying to be the second coming of Boston Rob? I mean, I kind of get the feeling all the favorites are just kind of laughing behind his back and thinking, okay, this is going to be fun until we get to about 7 or 8 people, and then you're gone.
Right. I'm sure that's the case. You know, he thinks he's in charge, or he may even know that he's not in charge. You know, he may have no idea how much screen time he's really going to get with this nonsense.
Yeah.
You know? Because you really don't know what the dynamic is at camp. We're all sitting here, the three of us, saying, you know what, it looks like Cochran is kind of in control, at least of his own game. He may kind of be in control of the camp, too. I don't know, or Dawn.
Yeah.
Andrea. But Phillip is telegenic and an ass, kind of, right, in a lovable donkey kind of way. And so, you know, and so he makes for fun and funny TV. It may only be those 8, 10, 25 seconds over the course of 3 days that he's talking like that, but they're making it into the edit of the show.
They're making a meal out of it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting just about, like, the clothes. I mean, everyone constantly talks about his pink undies. You know, those are underwear from American Apparel, so ostensibly chic underwear. I think he might think he's chic wearing them. They look kind of preposterous, but they kind of told him to wear that stuff. You know, they'll tell people to wear stuff. And, you know, they'll tell Cochran to wear a vest, which he would never in his normal life because, you know, maybe that looks like what a Harvard graduate would wear to Mark Burnett. But you can say no. You can say, I'm not wearing that. And for some reason, it doesn't seem like this season anyone picked up on that.
Yeah, I think probably with Phillip after what happened with him the last time and how he got home and saw what kind of an edit he got and how much airtime he got. I think he was probably ready and willing to do whatever they wanted because he seems the type that he just enjoys the camera time.
No, you're exactly right. And they said, you know, you got to wear that red underwear. Of course I will, you know.
Right.
Of course I will. Listen, I don't know Phillip from a hole in the ground. I have never met the man. He may be the smartest, most charming, eloquent person, but he does come across as a delusional fool to me. You know, he's playing a strong game for the game that he's capable of playing, but he's doing well. He's on the right alliance. He's on the right side of all the votes. And athletically or physically, he's if not the dominant, a dominant player out there.
Right.
And he win this game. I don't know who he would. I don't see him being savvy enough to put himself in a final 3 next to 2 people that he can beat.
Right.
I see him potentially being brought to a final 3 and wearing his Indian robe with the feather in his hat again, or whatever the hell that was, you know, and yes, more power to him. He made it to the finals, and he could do it again. I just don't see him winning the game.
Right. And we're also approaching the time of the season where fans start wondering about the family visits and all that stuff. And since we've got Stacy on, Stacy, why don't just tell fans how it is having a husband that goes out there 3 times. He's away. You're at home wondering what he's doing, worried about him, and then you get the call and you're going to get to go fly out and see him. Just tell everybody the emotions and everything that runs through you when you're dealing with that.
Well, it first starts out that, you know, the first time he went, it was the worst time for me because the kids were smaller and I didn't know what to expect and how I'd feel. And we have a relationship that's very entwined and very connected because not only are we parents together, we write together. We're partners, we're lovers, we're so connected that, like, him being gone and the way that that someone, when they're playing Survivor, has gone as like, approximating, excuse me using this word because it's not a serious thing when someone goes play Survivor, but it feels like death, like there's no contact.
Yeah.
So you get these weird dribbles like they made it to location, like one-line email, and then, they start to introduce the idea of a visit, but you don't know if you're going to make it to go. And then, obviously he got injured the second time he played, but the first time when I went, it was just the idea that I was going to finally see him.
Yeah.
So overwhelming and so emotional. And I was almost like a little crazy, a little bit more neurotic, and a little less calm than I would normally be. And that happened this time too, and I was calmer this time. But I was almost sort of curious this time, like, who else is going? And I was, a little bit trying to, like, figure out the lay of the land. And no one was asking me, did your guy play before? And I guess because my last name is different, no one noticed who I was. They weren't really true fans because they hadn't remembered me being on the show. But, it's such emotional because, if you go out for dinner with the producers and they take you to location and one person is not going to go to the visit. And I knew that from the first time I played. And that was Candace's father, who got kind of told and then pulled aside to hang out with the shrink. So I knew this time that could happen to me.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
Right.
Horrible.
And to go out there and see you're in the same situation as him, being a player with experience. You've been through this 2 previous times, and like you said, you're more aware of everything going on around, and you're wanting to know this and wanting to know that, and you get out there and you're excited because you're thinking, wow, he's still in it, we can do this, and then bam, you get out there and you don't get to see him.
And I really don't know if Abby's mom would have understood what was going on. And I think that whole day, I think the producers thought she was going, and then you saw she won that challenge. So
Yeah.
there's this funny thing where they were really being solicitous of her all day. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm okay. Like, that's how I was feeling. I was feeling pretty good. And then it all turned around, obviously. I mean, you think about the episode, and then, you just watch the faces. I'm so intuitive. I'm a writer. I'm a director. I direct actors. I see what goes on people's faces, and I see one of the producers read something and then, like, look at me, and, like, her face, like, she's looking at
Yeah,
me.
your awareness level is sky high.
It was sick.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, I'm done. I'm toast. And I said, you know what? I want to go back. Because they were all like having, they were all eating the food and drinking and having fun. And actually, Malcolm's brother was completely, drunk and kind of telling everyone stuff about Malcolm, which was hilarious. Like,
Yeah.
his whole game. Oh, he went to Dartmouth, but doesn't want anyone to know that. All this stuff was really funny. And everyone was kind of like, oh my god. And I'm just looking at the producer, and I'm thinking, I gotta go back because I'm toast. I was bad. I felt it.
All right, Jonathan, you've done it 3 times. Some players have done it 4. If the timing was right and everything lined up perfectly, would you go out there and try to win that $1 million again?
Sure, I would. I probably would. They haven't asked me to do it again.
Right.
I consider myself incredibly lucky to have been asked once, let alone 3 times. That's a God's honest truth. It's been an incredible experience. And, I'm sure you've heard this from many of the folks that you've talked to. It's such a impactful, high adrenaline experience that you want to duplicate that. You want to get back to it. I remember, so just to make a long-winded answer, yes, I would, if I could. But I don't really anticipate that because I've had more than my fair share.
Well, I don't know. You never know. You're good TV, and you've got a strong fan base. So,
well, thank you. Listen, I would certainly be open to it if I was available. The timing was right enough, and I was able to do it. Mark Burnett said to us the night before the shipwrecking of the Cook Islands, He said, we're about to start this thing, and we've spent millions of dollars so you guys can have this once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience, which was true. And he said, I urge you to just take in every sunrise and sunset and every second that you're out there, because even the winter's only going to be out there for 39 days, and you're going to be spending a lot of time after you get home trying to get back on that island.
Right. All right, well, I think that's going to just about do it for us. One last thing for Stacy. Are the Lakers going to make the playoffs or not?
Oh, my God, Jim. I don't know. What happened tonight? Did they lose?
I haven't seen a score. The way I had heard it today, they could afford to lose one more game, but they would have to win the rest of them to get in.
And the thing is, if they lose tonight, they're not in control of their fate, and so that's never the position you want to be in. Let's see if they won. I'm looking at my NBA game time.
I think Denver beat San Antonio tonight, but both of those they're already shoe-ins. I don't know. I hope they get in because
tonight. The Lakers won tonight. So based on that,
yeah, Kobe scored 47 tonight.
Oh my God! Talk about desire. He's so amazing. Now there's still a half game up over Utah, and that's the first. I want you to know that's the first back-to-back game they won all season.
Wow.
Yeah, but you know what? Jonathan was with Dr. Karazi, who does the Survivor. He's the Survivor doctor for his ankle. And Ron Artest had just been there and had that
Meta World Peace.
Yeah.
World Peace had the surgery too, and they thought he'd be out for 4 weeks. He came back in like 12 days.
Yeah. I think he came back last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that no one wants the Lakers in the first round. Will they?
I wouldn't want them.
I wouldn't want them.
Now, you fans out there who are like me, who could not give a rat's behind about the Lakers or the basketball season, it just ain't as good a game as Survivor, is it? No, it ain't.
I'll probably have to side with you on the Survivor thing, but I know Stacy's a huge Lakers fan, and we talk basketball a lot. I like the Memphis Grizzlies, and she likes the Lakers, so we pick at each other a little bit.
Good. Who are the Grizzlies going to have in the first round?
They're going to have the other LA team.
The Clippers.
Yeah, they're going to have the Clippers.
They can make a meal out of the Clippers. I think they match up well with the Clippers.
They've played each other the last two playoffs, and they're 1-1.
I want to put a plug in for the HBO documentary 50 Children, narrated by my sound-alike Alan Alda. But more important, it's the story of the adventure, really, that helped my mother and her sister escape the Nazis. It's not only about them, but there were 50 children that were saved from Vienna in 1939. She and her sister were two of them. It's an incredible true story. And the HBO just made a documentary about it.
Yeah, I saw you talking on Twitter and Facebook about that tonight. We'll keep everybody updated on that too, and make sure nobody misses it.
Yeah, it's amazing, and thanks to that story, I'm here losing at Survivor.
And Jim, who's going to win the NBA this year?
Boy,
if you're not going to pick your team because you kind of
I'm not going to do what everybody. I'm not going to pick the Heat like everybody says. I think the Knicks are going to knock them off this year.
Cool.
So
right.
I'm going to say the Thunder is going to win it this year.
Interesting. We shall see. I think the Knicks match up pretty well with the Thunder, though.
Yeah.
Is it true that I don't care about the Thunder or the Knicks or any of that stuff? Is it true that Brenda has not had a confessional in 8 episodes?
I think I counted one. I think I counted one. It's I'll tell you guys more about that off the air, but
right.
There's stuff going on there as to the reason that's happening.
I'd love to know, but
really?
She could not be more beautiful, and she's done such a kick. She's been so kick-ass. This whole episode, she was so kick-ass. She was the dominant player of this episode. And did they even put her up as the dominant player?
No, she wasn't even nominated.
That's insane. That sprint thing should have been her, right?
Yeah, I would have thought so tonight. It should have been.
She's so freaking cute.
All right, we're gonna cut it off here. We're gonna get this stuff up in the morning for everyone on the internet to listen to you guys, and it's been a pleasure hearing your thoughts on this season and everything else. And maybe we'll do it after it's all over with and look back and see how smart or how dumb we were.
All right, man. Good fun.
Sounds great.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, bye-bye.